Stream. There we are. Hooray. Just adjust some things here and there. Paste some things here and there. Streaming half-assed game dev. Alright, so here we are, back again, been a while. My window is open, but given the amount of noise coming through it, I may have to close it. So if you hear the sound of me leaping over my microphone, that's what I'm doing. So I missed a week of streams because I was doing other stuff. And now I'm back. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of just farting around, as everybody knows. So we're going to fart around with a little bit better visibility. Right now it's super bright coming in through my window. We're using the dark fog post effect. And obviously that's a bit too dark for what I want at the moment. That was just something we were experimenting with. So we can come down here into this and change it out for the sunny fog. There we are. And now you can see that this is the sort of thing that you see when you are flying around or swimming around in water here. Now there are plenty of things we still have left to do, as in everything. There are some questions as to what order to do things in order to make things even vaguely approachable. For example, we could theoretically begin adding gameplay now with things like breath limits and stuff like that. But I think in this case it probably makes more sense to play around with ways of adding in junk, things that make it look a little bit denser in here. And largely that's a matter of like small rocks and stuff. Now the way I would do that in Unity is, Al says, diving. Yes, I'm just kind of farting around. Don't expect too much. The way I would do that in Unity is I would use a custom object spitter. I would have a tool that would spit either particle objects or real objects wherever I clicked. Now Unreal does have a tool for that, but I believe it's height map terrain only. Let's find out. So if we switch over to the foliage brush, we can add a foliage type, and there's none ready to run. Here's a foliage, static mesh foliage brush here. We'll go ahead and create a new static mesh foliage brush under geometry. And we should be able to select a mesh of our choice, and we have a couple of rocks, so we'll just pick one of our rocks. It's called a foliage instant static mesh component. That's quite a tongue twister, considering it's not foliage, it's explicitly not foliage. So if we take a look at whether or not we can paint it, you can see that we can't really see any sort of highlight, and we don't appear to be painting anything. My guess is that we have to paint it onto a topology surface. It's not triggering right now. Sorry, I'm trying to think about some ways around this. This is paint, reapply, single. Oh, okay, so it works fine. I just didn't have it selected. Right, so let's try this. And if we were to, say, splatter it, look at that. You can see that we have a real quick set of instanced meshes. Now, there's a couple of things wrong with this. One of the things that's wrong with it is that everything is the same size. And another thing is I'm not sure whether or not it actually has colliders attached. We'll see in a minute here. So this radius, I'm not sure what this means. Doesn't appear to do anything. Oh, the minimum distance. Okay, that's fine. Scaling. Okay, so we can have it have a randomized scale, so that's fine. Yeah, so that'll work. So this is good. This is good. I thought it was going to be a lot less freeform than this. I thought it was going to be a lot more obnoxious. So we're going to go ahead and just plant some rocks. Now we do want a random yaw, random pitch. We're going to go ahead and set these up to be pretty significant. Down here we've got the ground slope angle. These will allow us to limit the slope on which our rocks get placed. So as you can see, they're not getting placed here. Hold on, there's someone talking right outside my window. He's got to have a phone conversation, and he's got to have it directly underneath my window. Now, I was thinking that changing the ground slope angle to a ridiculously huge number would make it work. It does not appear to be the case. Oh, okay. So for some reason, you can't go past 180. Okay, whatever. It's all good. Just kind of looking around here. Static is all good. Seems all good. Here, no collision. What we want to have here is a block all instead. And that should do it. So in theory, we can now kind of just wander around spamming rocks anywhere we want and get a good set of rough, rocky cave sort of situations. Now the issue with this is that these brushes don't pile up on each other. In Unity, I was careful to make it so that they could pile up, meaning that if I kept clicking, it would just get thicker and thicker and thicker, and I could use that to kind of paint debris roof tiles. But I can't do that here. These are not affecting the hiccups, the base topology at all, so, you know, somewhat limited in terms of the amount of offsets we can get out of them. But you can already see that this is really sprucing up things. The only issue is that right now, the way I've got it set up, it won't paint on the underside. I'll have to adjust the brush to allow it to paint on the underside of things, just because of the way that the roof minimum and maximum worked out. This here, for some reason, I couldn't get it to behave well, but I guess we're going to be okay. Maybe I was inside of an object when I was doing that, and that was the issue. I suppose we'll find out. No, it's still not triggering there. Just keep pumping it up. Nope, it's not working. I don't really know. I'm not sure what to do about that, but that's fine. If I can't paint on the top of a cave, I'll survive. I'll find out some other way to do it. So we're just spamming these objects. These are going to be very cheap objects because they are static instanced meshes, meaning that they don't actually exist in the game world, and should be just kind of a fun, pokey thing to add in wherever we want it to add. Now, right now we are adding one particular rock over and over and over, and we could easily change this out for cycling between a couple of rocks or for things like foliage. But for now, I think we're going to just stick to some rocks to try and get a basic feel for things. Let's take a look. Let's rebuild the lighting. I know we've got a little bit of lighting in here. Mostly we're using some old school PS2 style faked fog, which is really screwing with our lighting. But hopefully if we develop this into something a little bit more significant, here. Yeah, I thought that might be the case. Hopefully if we develop this into something a little more significant, we will be able to use more lighting. We'll have like actual lighting, but at the moment we are just using some very, very primitive setups. And you can see that these are pretty big actors. I'm using very large rocks. Normally speaking, that wouldn't be an issue, but in this case the problem is that I want to stack smaller rocks into kind of like just an endless, not fractal, but, you know, layered elements. And the issue we've got is that we need to maybe add another foliage type. So we'll just... Huh? So it's not letting me create another new one. That's interesting. I thought I'd be having... I didn't think I'd have a problem creating another new one because it let me create a new one first. Let's call this rocks. What I need is another instanced foliage type. Here it is. Just need to start over there. That's fine. So we'll go back into geometry. We've got rocks. We're going to do small rocks. And I don't actually know whether or not small rocks is actually going to be small rocks. Okay, that's interesting. I renamed it and it created a duplicate. And something funky going on. And I can't add it by dragging it in. Okay, so let's delete this and try again. There's clearly something stupid happening here. Okay, so I've destroyed it. It is now errored out. Great. So give me a second while I reboot. Oh, I was recording full window instead of screen. That's fine. You got to see my icons at the bottom. That's such an important thing. We're going to have to reboot the system here, Unreal, because it is clearly barfing. I didn't realize it was going to have such a problem with me renaming an asset, but you can never tell with game dev environments. They are always rickety as hell. All right, welcome back. Boom. So if we take a look, you can see we've got rocks, but we don't have either of the other ones we created. So my guess is that I was having some ghosting problems due to having two assets with very similar names. Renaming an asset, getting a ghost asset, deleting the asset, having the ghost asset left over. It was not great. So we'll go back in here, and we're going to add another static mesh foliage type, which we're going to call small rocks. Now, the thing I was saying is I don't think that these are actually small rocks. I think it's just... Oh, no, it is. Okay, that's good. So just pick another rock. It doesn't really matter. And basically, all we need to do is bring our... first off, our density is too high, and we can bring our scale way down to like 0.2. And in theory, we should be able to now paint tiny rocks. See? But the problem is that the tiny rocks don't get painted on top of the large rocks. They get painted... Oh, do they? That looks like they're on top of the large rocks. Well, let's find out. No, they're not. I think those are just tall enough to peek through. See, because they're not getting painted on top of the large rocks can't be painted using this method. In order to, or maybe the problem is that they're both occupying the same space. And if they're both occupying the same space, yeah, so you can see how they're not getting very close to these rocks. That's because the density pattern, I think it's overlapping. I think that both of these have the same density space, so I can't get within a certain range. I don't know what I'm talking about, actually. I think that maybe they're just so small that they're inside of these other rocks. But as I'm trying to say, these large rocks can't be placed using this system because they don't allow us to continue to put other things on them. This system is going to have to be preserved and reserved for smaller rocks. Or smaller objects in general. It's not necessarily rocks. Yeah, that seems to be the case. So the question is, how do we create those larger elements without having to spend all day manually shaping every single piece of the puzzle? Now, one way to do that would be to use voxel environments, voxel terrains. I don't think that there is a nice free voxel terrain editor in Unreal. I think that there are a couple of expensive ones, but I'm not ready to jump into that just yet. So if I wanted to do this, I would have to do it using meshes. And I believe that there is probably some kind of tool for clicking to add a mesh. in edit mode, but I don't know anything about it or how to achieve it. So if we were to switch to move, okay, so move does not do what I wanted it to do. If we switch to select, you can see that we can grab these and we can manually move them around. So we can get them to behave just like normal meshes, but their interactions with the spray paint here is not working out. Can we make it so that these I would think there would be an option to let these collide with other foliage brushes, but for some reason that's not an option. No. So we are going to have to make the large rocks out of large rocks. Which sounds stupid, I know. So we're going to go ahead and just deactivate this for now. Oh, can't do it. So deactivating it apparently just... deactivating it doesn't actually make it go away. It just makes it so we don't paint it anymore, I guess is the deal. What I actually want to do is delete all of them. Yeah, so... let's see. How do I delete all of them without causing this to remove? All right. Boom. All right. So now we've just got these little warty things left over, which really aren't any good as they are. We'll have to figure out what we want to do with them. But really what we need is the ability to place a mesh by clicking. So let's see whether or not, I mean, we have this single option, but the single option is still going to place the same kind of mesh, meaning that we're not going to be able to place a single mesh on top of a single mesh. So if we click here, we get a rock, but if we keep clicking, we just get more rock. We don't like stack up on top of ourselves. But let's play around now that we've got this single mesh. If we were to, oh, that's not really what I wanted to do. If we were to drop in some rocks here. Now these are set to, let's make them all the same size so that we can see what we're doing. And if we come down here, I just want to make sure that we are blocking all. I don't see any other like specific like block all plus more block on foliage or anything. So that's what it looks like when we click. And as you can see, it's not piling up. It's just a random rotation within the same blob. See? So if we could make it so that it would chain, then we could use this tool. But we can't use this tool because it is not chaining. There it is. Found it. Yay! Perfect. Never mind. Figured it out, everybody. Everything's good. I don't want to, I can just use the erase tool, right? Erase, there we are. So if we bring this back up to 3, we can go back and do all that shit that we just did again, which is fine. That's kind of the nature of the game. You're trying to figure out how to do things. So basically, now that we have the ability to place these on top of themselves, we should be able to create some... Is the radius not working out? Single. Pinkety. Yeah, okay, we can do it using single. It looks like it might be one of those things where single is a different... there's like a density limitation that is being used when we use the paintbrush. And I don't know much about it yet. It's still quite new. I just discovered it. So now that we've placed a bunch of these, let's go ahead and pull those small rocks in. Kapow. Going to disable the big rocks, go over to the small rocks. And basically the check is, yeah, look at that. They can be placed on top of the new rocks, which means that if we were to increase the density of the small rocks to 100, you can see that we get these kind of rough little pebbles. Now there is some risk that these rocks are going to pile on top of themselves. Nope, because they don't have colliders, so that's fine. We're still having some issues with some of these values, but it's much better than it was before, and you can see that we're getting some nice recursive rock structures. It's not working out too badly. For something that we put together in 20 seconds, this is just fine. We're going to switch back over to main rocks here and go back into single mode and splock some down on the wall. There we are. Go back into this mode and splock some down on the things that we splocked down, which isn't working. Why isn't that working? Oh, because I have the maximum height set differently, don't I? I don't understand this. Why isn't there a just put it down all the time option? Well, we'll work on it. We'll figure it out. See, look, it's not placing. I'm presuming that what it's doing is based on the density map, but that doesn't make any sense. Why aren't we getting any rocks here? Are they being placed below? Where are our rocks? Alright, so there's something stupid happening here. You can see that we've got a cull distance. That's kind of neat. So we're going to go ahead and add a cull distance here. Maybe 150. Yeah. But you can see that that cull distance is on the wrong object. So we're going to select the correct object. So that was the problem. The problem was that we had the wrong object selected when I tried to change the ground slope. So I was confused because I was looking at the wrong thing. But that doesn't seem to actually be helping. Oh wait, they do exist. That's interesting. I'm not sure when they came into existence, though. There's something a little bit screwy going on. I don't know what it is. Let's take a look here. So you can see that although this is very, very basic, it's already starting to add some flavor to the level. Now, we don't want to go with just the same rock over and over and over. We really should be varying the rock with a couple of different tones and patterns of rock. Right now we have a couple of different rock shapes we can use, but the issue is that they all have the same material. So obviously this is fine for a first pass where we just kind of want to get a sense of how things are going to work. But as we move forward, we're going to need to do much better. We're going to need to figure out how we want it to actually look. And you can see that the distance I specified must be in centimeters. That must be the issue. I'll never get used to these distances all being in centimeters, but that's okay. Yeah, so here you can see this is how it looks. That is not bad. That is not bad at all. If you look at the way that, let me just select some stuff here. Centimeters is a bit of an odd choice. Yeah, it is. Everyone else uses meters. So if you take a look here, you could probably change it in prefs, but there's a bug in the version of Unreal that I have on my machine, which I think is related to the Unreal Asset Store, where it refuses to use the same settings. So even if you save your settings as default, it will ignore them and open up the default settings that were factory default every single time. So whenever I create a new game, the more settings I change, the more settings I'm going to have to manually change every single time I start a new project. And when you're prototyping like this, you want to get rid of it. Yeah, so It is really obnoxious, and I don't know what it is, but I hope that it goes away with the next version. Either way, I'll get used to centimeters rather than constantly changing it. Yeah, so this is what I was trying to point out is the way that the depth fog interacts with the rocks is critical to selling the effect that we've got here. In order for this to really work, we need to be able to get the sense that these rocks exist at a specific depth away from us. If we're using basically flat shading, but we're using flat shading with a distance filter on it. So that's why it's so critical to have that distance filter actually hit our rocks with a good feel. Otherwise, it would just like be a plane of random terrain nonsense, and you wouldn't be able to read it because it would all be the same color. But here you can see that it's fairly legible. We may want to change exactly how it works up close, maybe later. We'll think about it. But you can see that we do get a really good sense of the distance that we have with these rocks. A good enough sense that I am actually going to take some screenshots and post it to Twitter. So very basic underwater setup with depth fog and rocks as foliage. Pretty quick to set up. Someone is trying to pick an argument with me on Twitter. Just asking. Just asking questions. Yeah. All right, so the basic idea we've got here is working pretty well. We do have some problems with the lighting, as you may have seen over there. Lighting needs to be rebuilt. So lighting is going to be an issue in this game just constantly because the way that lighting works requires bounce lighting, but bounce lighting is actually not very good underwater. It doesn't give the right impression. It might be better to not use any bounce lighting and just use dynamic lighting for everything. But if we do that, then the issue becomes that that there's not enough light. So the diffuse light that we get from lights, underwater lights, or the sun filtering down from above or whatever, we would want to be able to get that to light up the area properly, but we can't do that because there is no bounce light that is similar enough to how light actually refracts and diffuses through water. So in the end, we're using this bright depth fog effect to fake it, and I'm not sure that's going to work. But I do know that we can't just use bounce lighting. So I guess the question is whether or not we want to use any baked lighting at all. And maybe the answer is yes, and maybe the answer is no. I haven't decided yet. But I can tell you that having those lighting needs to be rebuilt warnings off to the side is going to get old real fast, especially since I am... oh, I'm in the wrong mode here. especially since I am unable to actually bake lights right now. This is not set up for baking. It's too big, too heavyweight. So Al says, what about fading to dark blue? Well, this is specifically set up to be the fade to bright version. If we go over into the post-process volume, we can substitute in any of our fog effects. Right now we have, here's one for the cave, right? So if we wanted to be in the dark, we could use this fog effect, which isn't really very foggy. I think that I screwed up the distances. We'll have to work on that. But you can see that it does not fade to white, it fades to black. It's customizable. We can create any number of materials that do the job. This one ends up looking super PS2 because I kind of just left it off halfway done. We're going to need to figure out what we want. That might be fun. It might be fun to kind of get this lighting effect to work in the dark. And I think the way we're going to do that is we're going to fake it because we know that we have a headlamp. So we're going to kind of assume that the light nearby, near us, is from our headlamp. So let's go and take a look at how we've got this set up and edit it to be kind of interesting. So there it is. Pop it up. Here's what we're doing with it. We've got a 3-color lerp in this bad boy. I think that the other one only has a 2-color lerp. No, it's also a 3-color lerp, but it's set up differently, right? So the cave one has a 3-color lerp, which ends up looking a little bit too sharp and crisp, but that might be more because of the range involved rather than because of the color choice. So we're going to lower the range by half. And it just gets so bleak, so dark. So we're going to adjust some of these values here. We've got this ambient color value, and currently it is set to white, really? And then the fog color is set to black. That's strange. I must have been, half-assing it. I must not have actually been... This must have been something I did as I was signing off for the day, because it's a little bit basic. So if we change that to orange, you can see that we see no orange here. You see that? There's basically no hint of that orange. And the reason for that is because we're lerping between orange and black. See this? Fog color to ambient color. And the way that this works is the lerp that we're using, which is just a flat opacity fade. This multiply is not involved. It's trending towards black much faster than it should, which is not what we should be seeing. So basically we take the... Okay, so this was something we don't need as well. Just delete that. Just looking around here, what have we got? So this is the flat color. This is the final color. This is the lit color. This is what we would normally see if we didn't have a shader doing any post-processing. And if we're nearby, that's the value we get. However, this 3-color lerp is driven by this depth fade. So at halfway across the depth fade, we're getting this middle channel, and near the end of the depth fade, we're getting this final channel. The final channel is, of course, that pitch black, just straight black fog. And we're lerping between the orange and the black here, but that means we're lerping between the orange and the black twice, which I think is a mistake. So let's take that orange and just use it straight and see whether or not we get a good orange result. Yeah, so there, you can see that there's some orange there now. Now, it's still not very foggy. And the reason for that is, we've got some screen space occlusion going on here. That's really awful. We'll have to figure out what we want to do about that. It's not compatible with the fog effect, at least in the dark. Let's go ahead and turn that off and see what it looks like, or turn it down maybe. It's obviously just too much at the moment. So here's our ambient occlusion. It looks like it's set up to be interesting. So if we take a look at this density here, having a wider density, or the default density, whatever it is, does help, but it also introduces this really grainy look to all of the surfaces, which I'm not sure is what we want. If we soften it up, we get this result, which is super PS2. You see how this feels kind of like you're on a PS2. But I think what we want to do is, rather than having the PS2 effect get solved using an ambient occlusion post-processing, I think we want to solve it using proper depth fog. As you might remember, in the earlier version, we had a really good definition on rocks that were about this range away. We just do not have that here. They're just flat and not working at all. So if we delete this lerp, and that's going to be just something we move over here. In theory, we should be multiplying the flat value by orange. So I deleted the lerp, but I think we're going to have to add it back in. We're trying to introduce some variety within the range that we're using. So if we do bring that black back in, we're fading between ambient color and black according to the alpha. But maybe what we need to do is square the alpha. Let's try squaring it. So you can see how there is like this pulse of brightness. What we've got here is, when we get close like this, we're using the actual lighting from the scene, which when we're in camera mode is nothing. When we're in first person mode, it's an orange headlamp, see? So as we move across in this mode, we're not seeing much in the way of fog. And I don't really know what's up with this. It feels like we should be seeing a lot more depth fade than we're seeing. I'm not sure why we have this like super crisp that then suddenly fades to just a pitch black. We don't have any softness to it. And that might just be because of the depth that black holds. Black is a very, heavy color. It might simply be that it's too black. It's none more black or whatever. If we bring this square and we bring that all the way over here as well, then that will mean that we're moving closer to, God damn it, this. That would mean that we're moving closer to nearby. All of our stuff is going to be weighted like it's closer to us, which means that we get a much softer fade to black. See how we kind of push that black away from us in a different way? It's still much too fast. Part of that is simply because I lowered the range to 20 meters. If we bump that back up to 40 meters, then we'll be able to see further. But the problem is that then we lose the resolution. In fact, you can see there's a brightness bump. See that? How right in front of us we've got these lights, and then there's this dark ring, and then there's a bright patch. That's that bright patch that we get because we are multiplying by yellow. If we were to multiply by a darker color than yellow, maybe that would be more natural. Let's find out. I'm just kind of fooling around, having fun with it, trying to figure out what is the best option for us. So now we're multiplying by a very dark amber color, and you can see that it gets dark really, really fast. Even with the 4000 range, we get this really dark saturation pretty quick. Now over there you can see the light, and you can see how the light remains super brightly lit even as we back away from it. until our darkness overwhelms it. And I think that's because we are, in fact, using both colors. Let's find out here. Very Tomb Raider, Al says. Yeah, it's very PS2. The core issue is that I don't have a really nice volumetric fog effect that does lighting. So it's something I'm just kind of fussing with, trying to get it to work. So here is the post-processing input 0. Post-processing input 0 is the actual final scene lighting, what we expect to see. And here you can see we're using it again down here, and we're using this screen overlay. That means that we're going to get very bright elements. If there is lighting in the area, we are using a screen effect on it, which will punch it way up. So we take the default values, which are just the actual flat unlit textures, and we're multiplying that by our ambient occlusion, and then we are applying just our flat lighting. Yeah, just our final lighting, rather. We're screening it with our final lighting, which pumps it up to a very bright color if necessary, and then we're doing this fog fade. But it still doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel foggy. Al says that he fixed his computer, which is good to hear. He's replacing all of his peripherals today. See, this doesn't feel like fog. There's no fog. It doesn't feel foggy. And I think a part of that is because we're using black. Let's go ahead and use something a little bit less black. Let's see whether or not we can get an effect that's... I think that we're going to have to go to black, but I think that what we're going to have to do is use a few more stages. So let's bring this to a very dark blue, like this. Oh, look how that is not a dark blue at all. It's quite a vivid blue. See how you can now see that there is immediately a sense of depth over there. There's still no sense of depth down here, though, because we are squaring the value. And maybe that's the issue. Maybe we need to stop squaring it. So let's go and stop squaring it, for now at least. If we raise something to the first power, that's just how it normally is, right? Yeah, so... trying to get that foggy feeling, and I just don't feel it. And I think a big part of that is the ranges involved. Yeah, see how back there at the far range you get that sort of feeling of fog. Let's keep fussing with it. Let's just keep randomly twiddling things, and eventually we'll figure out what we kind of want. This orange color might be too dark. Let's punch it up to a very, very vivid orange. Now, obviously, we're having a vivid orange fading into a vivid blue. Not recommended, but I'm just doing this so I can see what the heck is up. And then I'll be able to adjust it. So you can see that there is blue, so we can see when the blue is coming in. And then this is orange. So we can tell that the orange is not giving us the slightest hint of a foggy depth. For some reason, this orange coloration is just not hitting our eyes. It just looks flat. That's so strange. Is it something about the color orange? Let's try a different color. If we were to fade to, say, a vivid green, something like this, would we get a sense of depth? What about a brown? Well, it was pretty close to a brown. Orange is very light. That might be the case. It might simply be how the color impacts our eye. The yellows are inherently much brighter than the other colors. If we wanted to go with a darker color, a green or a low saturation value of anything would work. But here you can see the problem. You can see exactly what was causing us our grief. We're fading to green. So the orange you can see up front, that's our actual headlamp, our final lighting headlamp that we would be able to see without the... Well, hold on, I can actually show it to you. If I were to break, that was F9. No, how do I do it? Shift F9? I can't remember. F8? F8. So if we come down into our post-processing volume, and that was weird. I had to double-click it and completely lose track of everything. Brilliant. So if we were to try and get back to where our player character is... Oh, for fuck's sake. Why do I... This is weird. So for some reason we weren't allowed to edit the post-processing volume while we were in it. But if we were to go down, you can see this is how it looks with no post-processing. This is how it looks with post-processing. The green is very clear here, and you can see that it fades from our actual lit orange to that green. But it doesn't fade in a foggy way. It doesn't really feel like we're losing the edges or there's murk. It just feels like you're desaturating it, like you're losing the saturation, which, I mean, that's not incorrect, but I really need it to go away. And I think the issue here is pretty simple, now that I'm thinking about it. The core issue is that what we're doing is we're taking the value, the visual value, and if we were to just use that visual value, it would be here very flat. And then we're multiplying that visual value by a color. So the color that we're replacing this with is not, it's not moving into a color. It's not becoming the color. It's being tinted that color. So what we need to do here is instead of multiplying by this, we need to lerp into it. So let's go ahead and copy a lerp. And so instead of multiplying by the color, we're now going to lerp. And we're going to see whether or not that gives us the proper edge. Oh yeah, that's already much better. So you can see that now we're getting that foggy effect because we're no longer multiplying by the color. We're overriding with the color. So that means that we are losing definition rather than just changing our color. Now, of course, we've got our colors all screwed up due to all of that fussing we were doing, but you can already see that we're starting to get back that definition. So we're going to delete this. I think we're going to want to do this a little bit more complexly. So let's sort these out a little bit more here. Chapow and chapow. And this will be a 2. And Al is given color advice, which I think we're going to have to see what we can see over here. We're going to go for a deep brown here because that's the kind of color of our headlamp. And then this, we're going to bring it straight back to black. So you can see that even though we picked a fairly dark brown, the actual color we're getting is shockingly bright. That doesn't seem right. I might have made a mistake picking the color because this looks like it's like a light tan, not a dark brown. The fade into black looks pretty good, but it looks like there is this weird, like super bright spike. Yeah, look at how bright that is. Oh, it looks like it's close to black, but it is not close to black. It's interesting. There's only a small amount of usable color value for the fog effect. And here you can see it looks super desaturated, which is good. But it's so bright. it's still super duper bright. And because it's bright, we're really losing all of that color definition, all that value definition. So that's not what I wanted to open. You can go away. You can go away as well. And here, this is the ambient color we were using. Let's make it a vivid red, but a super duper dark one. That is so close to black that I can't believe it's not black. And the problem here is, of course, that this is the final emissive color that we're trending towards. So it is the flat color that gets shown on the screen, which might be something we have to adjust. Yeah, look, this is supposed to be close to black, and it is not. It is not even vaguely close to black. That might be because oh, you know what it is? I'm using the wrong power value. This is a power raising it to 0.2. We really want to do the opposite. Right? No, that might be even worse. It is. Interesting. What's going on here? Let's drive it straight. So now everything should be moving lockstep, but we still have this super bright color. This is like not the value we would expect. And I know what the issue is now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, so what we actually need to do is lerp. So let me go over this. This value here is the core value that we are getting. So we're going to go ahead and label this base albedo. Because it's the base albedo, when we lerp to a color, we're actually taking this base albedo and then we're lerping towards a color of our choice, right? Which means that if the value is low, we get the base albedo, which is friggin' white. It's like a very bright gray. So what we need to do is we need to multiply here. So we'll just multiply here. And then, well, that will be our base state. And I betcha that's going to work fine. If anything, it's going to be too dark because we've adjusted that brown to such a dark color. Yeah, that's not too shabby. It's, however, far too dark, as expected. It wasn't that the range was too low. It was just that we had been mixing it with a very bright gray the whole time. Oh, so that's still pretty dark. That's fine, though. So now we can sort of get a sense of things. You can see how we have these edges, these really sharp edges. We're going to want to figure out how we want to deal with those, I think. It looks good when those edges aren't too obvious, but we're definitely getting a really obvious fade to a color that's not black. So we're going to want to adjust it again. And basically that means this. Right? That's definitely a little bit better. No, we still have glow-in-the-dark rocks here. Maybe this can be fixed by simply changing the range, because right now we're still at maximum, big 4000 here. If we were to reduce the range... I mean, it's still really obvious that it's fading to a non-black color. It's still really obvious that we have this completely faked value, this PS2 value. We'll work on it later. For now, it was enough to just experiment with it for a while. Let's go ahead and switch over to sunlight again. I'm tired of having to squint. Sunlight. Oh, here it is. No, that's flow maps. That's not going to help. There it is. You can immediately see how much different this is. This is like super bright. And obviously we're going to have to change all these values around depending on what we want. But this is the heart of the idea. We've got our rocks, we've got our colors. this allows us to get a sense that we are in fact swimming around. There are still lots of things to do in order to make this swimming feel right. One of the issues we've got is I don't like this. Feel that? Forward, backwards, forward, backwards. That's fucking wrong. What actually happens when you go to accelerate underwater is you technically you move backwards a little bit first in most cases, and then you have this ramp. It's not a linear thing like this. It's not like just sudden pop. It's this ramp up. So we're going to see whether or not we can make that ramp up happen. One of the problems we've got is that we're using the swimming, or I think we're using the flying mode. And I don't know whether or not I can change the mass of that. I want the mass of that to feel really a lot heavier than it does right now, just because we have to push ourselves, right? So we do have this general settings, which I believe is for, oh, god damn it. Here it is. We got a mass of 100 here, but I don't know whether or not that's going to actually affect anything if we change it. So if I change it to 500, you can see that that made no difference at all. There's literally zero difference in terms of acceleration. I think the mass is about how far you get bumped when you get hit with something, maybe. We've also got this braking friction, max acceleration. If we reduce the max acceleration, the thing is, I think the max acceleration is per unit. So if we're here in flying, no, I see there's a speed, but there's no acceleration. So if we were to come up here and change the max acceleration to maybe, I don't know, 512, we're definitely a lot slower. There's definitely a lot more of that pick-me-up that I want. But what I really want to do is map it. I really want to make it like an animation, basically, an animation curve, where you really get a proper, you know, it starts slow, ramps up, then shoulders off. The way we've got it here is just a slow start, which is not how it actually really works, but it's better than how it was. Oh, initial push force. Is this? That's the opposite of what I need. Okay. I guess it's fine. It's fine. All right, so that was fun. There's still a lot of stuff that we need to do. One of the things I want to do is scatter some particle effects everywhere. The problem is that I don't know if this game engine has a quick particle effect scattering system. I believe it doesn't. I believe I would have to place all the particle effects manually, which is kind of a pain, but we'll do that. We'll do that for now at least. So it wasn't an option in the foliage placement. There is no place foliage. It's actor foliage or static mesh foliage. Actor foliage. There is an actor foliage. Let's try it. Let's try it. So here's our particle spam. We can select a particle effect to use for particle spam. The only issue is that it's not going to be optimized very well, is it? We'll find out. We'll find out. So, I don't know where I hid my particle effects. Oh, well. Let's open up the first-person character and find out. If we move back into select mode, we should be able to pop him open. And take a look at the particle effect that we put into him. Where's the particle effect? I can see it. There it is. It's called motes. Okay. So if we look for where motes is, boom, there it is. So motes is right here inside of materials. Interesting place for it. Don't know what idiot chose that. So just go back over into foliage and we will pick motes. Is motes not an actor? Is that the problem? Is a Niagara system not an actor? Can I place a Niagara? I can place a Niagara actor. I don't believe that a Niagara actor is the same as what I'm doing here. So here's FX. I believe that I'm using a Niagara system, hence the red background. I don't know what a Niagara actor is. Let's take a look. All right, so the Niagara actor it's empty. I don't really know what's going on here. I'm seeing whether or not Niagara system asset. So there we are. We save this and compile it. Now we're going to try to use this Niagara actor here. I believe that should work. Let's go ahead and use single placement and try it out. So, click. No, that's a rock. Click. Oh, it worked. I can see the motes already. See that? So this works. This works great. I was so concerned that it was going to take a ton of effort, but it was much easier than you might have thought. We can just place them with clicks. I bet that this is going to be heavy. Al says it looks lovely, which is honestly more than you can hope for at this stage of the game. We're still just prototyping. It would be shocking if it really looked great. Okay, so I think that what we've got here is a problem with the max again. Just change that. Close enough. Let's go ahead and see whether or not those Niagara motes exist. See, there they are. See that? It's going to float in there. Now, obviously, that's not the mote that we need. It's not what we actually need it to do. But we can replace this with any particle system we care to. So we can there's another one, see it? So we can come up with a particle system that is more suited to being a dusty floor or, you know, whatever. Let's go ahead and do that. So if we create a new Niagara system, we can call this a new system from a template. Simple explosion, directional burst, radial burst. Those are all bad. Here's pinging particulates. That'll do. All right, so we're going to call this muck. Oh, what? It didn't. Muck. There we are. So if we open up our muck, there it is. Exciting stuff, our muck. You can see it over there in the corner hanging out in front of some office building. And obviously that's not how we want it to look. One of the issues is that the particles are just not even vaguely correct. So if we look down here at the particles that are getting spawned in, we should be able to make our particles substantially different. First off, white is the wrong color here. We really need it to be kind of a muddy brown. Maybe even darker than that. I had to use several different particle colors in the past depending on the setup, because particles don't inherently understand lighting. They're usually unlit. Now, where is... I feel like your monitor is darker than mine, Al says. It might be. I mean, I'm really what the issue is, I've got the sun shining directly in my face. You're at like 8:30 p.m. or something, and for me it's the middle of the afternoon. So, it's one of those things that's easy to tweak. I'm trying to figure out where the material is. I know that there is a way to do the material here. So here we've got the idea that we're going to scale the sprite size. What we really need to do is make these sprites much, much larger. And I don't know whether or not we want to just bounce it. Yeah, that's better. But we're not... Render, here it is. So here we've got the default sprite material. We don't really want the default sprite material. What we want is some kind of dust material. The problem is I don't believe we have any kind of obvious dust material. But we do have the sprite material we were using. Well, let's leave it as this for a second here. If we save this and just replace that Niagara Actor's component with our new muck system, let's just take a quick little look. Al says, can I make them meshes or is it too expensive? I think I can make them meshes. I'm just not sure what mesh we'd use. So here's one, you can see it. We'll have to think about the best way to do this. We might use two emitters. One it's near the ground and one above it. I haven't really sorted it all out yet. One of the issues here is I think that half of the particles are being emitted inside the ground, which we're going to have to deal with later too. So the fundamental idea is here. Obviously these actors are also too small. Let's open up muck again and really increase the scale of our spawning here. So we got this box size 400, 400, 400, 100. We're going to go ahead and make that 1,000, 1,000, and 200. And then we're going to move it up some. So that ought to make it so that the boxes are large enough. Yeah, see how much larger these boxes are now? They no longer feel like they're being constrained to an artificial box. But we're still not getting anything that looks like proper dust or mud. We would need to go much, much denser, and I think we would need to use some kind of mesh. Al says that he would maybe use some stretched W-shaped meshes. I was actually thinking of doing two different kinds of particles. One which was an unlit mesh like this, an unlit non-mesh like this, and the other of which would be a mesh that was aligned to the surface to give the surface artificial depth. But I don't know how to make Niagara understand how to align to the surface. It could be that these are aligned to the surface. It's hard to tell. I think they might be. If that's the case, then I could have the Niagara effect spawn in like plates. Let's see whether or not I can get them to spawn in some plates. So can I create a new emitter? I can. Got a burst, a beam, fountains, hanging particles, omnidirectional bursts, sprite beams, upwards mesh bursts. Let's try this upwards mesh burst. That seems to be the closest to what we're going to have here. So you can see that pshow. Obviously, the whole point is that we're not going to do a pshow. And we're not going to do an instantaneous burst either. We'll work on it. So add velocity in cone. We don't want that. I'm going to just remove it. Pachow. So now you can see they just go bloop. I'm not sure what mesh we're using here. A Acero. Okay, so we're using a particle mesh called a Acero. What we really want to do is use a particle mesh called a plane. Where is it? I don't see it. And the other thing we need to do here is the spawner needs to be set up to spawn rate. I'm looking for the particle effect that should be here. It might be that there is something wrong with the plane. It doesn't count for some reason. Well, let's add a box location here. And we should be able to copy, I think. Copy. And paste. Okay, so there was just something wrong with the exact positioning. So you can see that our planes are not oriented in a meaningful direction. We really need to initialize them to be oriented in a different way. We're going to go ahead and delete this. And basically take a look and see whether or not so there's no initialization here for orientation. Orient mesh to vector. So if we do this, the only question is whether or not it's global or local. I don't see him anymore. It looks like that broke him somehow. There we are. So that will give us this spray of particles along this plane, right? Obviously, this is the wrong speed. Everything's screwed up. But let's just see whether or not we get a sort of sense of ground out of that. So we're obviously needing to change everything about it, but I want to see whether or not it orients itself correctly. And the answer is it does not. So that's clearly a world coordinate vertical rather than a local coordinate vertical, meaning that it's not aligned to the surface, which means we can't use it. There doesn't appear to be any option to change from a local to global or anything like that. It looks like it's pretty much done. We'll try one more thing here. Orient. Initial mesh orientation. Yeah, so here we do get a chance to change the coordinate system. So we'll see whether or not this one is properly oriented. It doesn't appear to be. It looks like it's got the exact same issue. And that could be because these Niagara effects aren't actually aligned to the surface. It could be that I thought they were aligned and they're not. But they should be able to be aligned. So if we go over into our little pasting plan here, placing these things. So it does say that it's aligned to normal, which means that these should all be aligned to normal. Maybe I have to put it into local space instead of simulation space. That kind of seems unlikely, but let's give it a shot. Oh, that seems to have done something. Let's take a look. That worked. Okay. So I guess that there's a big difference between simulation space and local space, and I don't know what that difference is. But here you can see these particle effects are clearly no longer aligned with the world. They're now aligned with something else. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be the normal of the thing I was trying to put them on, even though in theory it should be. This one is pointed straight down, or maybe straight up. It's hard to tell. Yeah, so this one's pointed off to the side. So I think we're going to need to take some other approaches here. Now, what I did in Unity is I manually created every single particle, and because they're slow, you can do that. You only have to create a couple particles every frame, and then they had an animation which would play, and they would always be pointed at the camera. They would always be camera-facing particles, and opaque ones at that. But this is... I have to think about it. I think it's fine. Let's go ahead and stop for the day. My voice is already giving out, even though it's only been like an hour. And maybe I'll see you Saturday, or maybe I will be just too lazy. We'll find out. Bye.